This week, a 19-year-old named Karmelo Anthony was sentenced to 35 years in prison for stabbing at a Texas track meet. He was an honor student, no criminal record. His defense said he was shoved and responded with a pocket knife he had in his backpack. The jury rejected his self-defense claim. A few years ago, a 17-year-old named Kyle Rittenhouse brought an AR-15 to a protest in Wisconsin, shot 3 people and killed 2. His self-defense claim was accepted. He was acquitted. Now, I'm not here to relitigate either case. I'm a licensed therapist and an ordained minister, and what I want to talk about is something underneath both of them. A question that exhausts a lot of people right now, and that question is this: whose fear gets believed? Whose fear gets believed? Now, I want to show you something. I want to be fair about it because fairness does matter to me. Every case I'm about to mention has different facts, different states, different laws. People will point that out and they're right, but I want you to pay attention to the pattern. A white 17-year-old brings a rifle to a volatile protest and shoots 3 people and kills 2. Says he was afraid, and his fear is believed, and he's acquitted. A black 17-year-old is at a school track meet with a pocket knife in his backpack, gets into a confrontation, gets shoved, stabs a person, says that he was afraid. His fear is not believed. 35 years. A black man named Mark Wilson is driving his car when a truck tries to run him off the road. People in this truck are screaming racial slurs at him. He fires at the truck. His stand your ground defense fails. 10 years. A black filmmaker named Kevin Epps shoots someone inside his own home. California's castle doctrine exists specifically for this situation. And he is acquitted of murder, but still convicted of manslaughter. In his own house, his fear was partially believed. Researchers at Harvard document that black homeowners are prosecuted for defending their homes at a rate that the castle doctrine was supposed to prevent. And then there's Cyrus Carmack Belton, 14 years old, South Carolina, accused of stealing 4 bottles of water from a convenience store. He put the water back and he left. The store owner and his son chased this child more than 130 yards over a football field and shot him in the back while he was running away. The coroner confirmed the gunshot wound was consistent with someone who was running away. Multiple witnesses said they never saw anything in his hands. The store owner was acquitted. A 14-year-old child running away, shot in the back. And the shooter's fear was believed. Now, I said I'd be fair. Each of these cases have different evidence, different juries, and different state laws. And a careful person can explain each and every single one of them individually. And I can expect that. But when you line them up, and here's the thing that I want you to see: whose fear gets believed and whose doesn't? This question survives every different jurisdiction rebuttal. Because the pattern isn't about any one case, it's about whose fear that the system will recognize and treat as reasonable, and whose body the system will treat as a threat. Why does this keep happening? The law is written on paper, but it's applied by people. And between the written law and the applied law, there's a gap, and it's a big one. Who gets charged and what they get charged with? Who gets bail and who doesn't? Whose self-defense claim sounds reasonable to a jury, and whose fear does the courtroom credit? Whose demeanor reads as remorse and whose reads as threat? Whose tears move the jury and whose tears get called manipulation. None of that is written in any statute. Yet all of it is decided by human beings making judgment calls in real time. And every one of those judgment calls is informed by perception. And here's the part that no one says out loud. Perception's not neutral, it's conditioned. Perception is shaped by media. Perception is shaped by culture, by upbringing, and by history. And if that conditioning has installed a default image of who looks dangerous, that image shows up in every discretionary decision that someone makes. A pocket knife in a black teenager's backpack reads differently than a rifle in a white teenager's hands. Not because of the law, but because of perception. And perception is where the disparity does its work quietly, deniably, and case by case. The law doesn't have to be racist for the pattern to be real. The law just has to leave room for human discretion. And discretion is where bias lives. Now, as a therapist, I understand fear. Fear is a survival mechanism. Our nervous systems detect threats and they respond. Fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. That's not even moral. That's actually biological reactions to fear. Every human being on this planet has that system. Every single one. Karmelo Anthony was afraid. Kyle Rittenhouse. Marcus Wilson was afraid. Kevin Epps. Every one of them experienced fear because fear is not owned by any one group, not regardless of race, ethnicity, gender, or anything else. Fear is a human response, and all of us have it. However, the credibility assigned to that fear is not equal, and that's where the injury lies. When certain people say, I was afraid, the system extends them the benefit of credible fear. Of course you were scared. Your response was reasonable, and we understand. When other people carry fear, and they carry it every day, that fear is not extended to shame credibility. Even worse, their very presence is sometimes treated as the thing that justifies somebody else's fear. They didn't do anything threatening. They were just there, and being there is enough. Now, let me add something as a minister, because this isn't just a clinical issue, it's also theological. God made human beings, and God made human beings with melanin. God designed that the skin that some people fear and other people flare. God designed that skin for protection of people, for their environment. Another way of saying it is the same God who said, I formed you in your mother's womb and you are fearfully and wonderfully made, created the very thing that triggers someone else's nervous system in a parking lot, in a courtroom, or at a track meet. And I'm just going to add this: melanin is not threatening. When your skin color is viewed as a threat, the injury isn't just social, it's sacred. Because what someone is saying is they're looking at what God made, who God made, and they're calling that person dangerous just because of melanin or skin tone. They are looking at the imago Dei, someone created in the image of God, and saying that their body is a threat. That's not just a justice problem, that's a dignity problem. And dignity was given by God before any system had a vote. Now, let me name something else that most people outside this experience never see. There's a tax, a constant low-grade tax on living inside a system where your skin is read as a threat before you've said a word and done a thing. As an African American male, someone of the skin tone I've had, I've felt this tax. Eyes looking at me just because I'm going to a bookstore to read, thinking that I'm going to steal something. People pulling me over at certain times of the day or night just because I might be viewed as a threat when I'm a minister or an honor student or something else. When you have this tax, you think about what you're wearing before you go into a store. You calculate how to hold your hands to a traffic stop. As a matter of fact, black families have this discussion all the time. When the police stop you, you do things certain ways so you're not viewed as a threat. You modulate your voice in the meeting so you don't get read as aggressive. You teach your sons things that other parents never have to teach, not because you're paranoid, but because you've seen what happens when the perception is wrong and the discretion goes the other way. Here's the thing that nobody talks about. Even this conversation is tax. Even right now, a black person discussing racial bias in the justice system has to be extra careful, extra fair, concede every counterpoint, acknowledge every jurisdictional difference, earn the right to name the pattern by first proving that they're not just being emotional. The vigilance doesn't stop at the street or the traffic stop. It follows you all the way into the conversations about the vigilance itself. If you carry this weight, I see you. Heck, I see you because I have that weight too. Your exhaustion is not weakness. My exhaustion is not weakness. It's the cost of being human in a system that hasn't fully decided that our humanity is the default based on how God made us. So what do we do? What do we do? Because I'm not just interested in naming the problem, I'm interested in finding how we can build from here. First, we have to be honest about perception, all of us. Every human being carries perception and bias. All of us. Acknowledging that isn't guilt, it's just awareness. And awareness is the starting point. If we've never examined what our nervous system does in the presence of certain people, that examination is overdue, not as punishment, but as awareness so that we can grow. Second, we have to create environments where all fear is treated as human, not just some people's fear, all of it. A black mother who's afraid every time her son drives at night, that fear is as human and as valid as any fear in any courtroom. A black teenager at a track meet who feels surrounded and shoved, his fear is as human as the fear of the person who brought a rifle to a protest. The question is whether our systems will treat it that way and recognize that. Third, we have to stop using different jurisdictions to avoid the pattern. We can respect individual legal outcomes and still name the systemic asymmetry. These are not contradictions. Holding both is the harder and more honest position, but I'd also like to say this, it's the only position that leads to somewhere. And fourth, we have to reckon with the fact that melanin was given by God, not by culture, not by accident, by God's design. And if we truly believe that every human being is made in the image of God, then we have to ask ourselves, what does it say about us when the image of God in someone's skin is the thing that makes us afraid? That's not a political question, that's a theological one. And it deserves more than just a social media opinion. It deserves honest, uncomfortable examination in our courtrooms, our communities, in our churches, and in ourselves. I'm not here to tell you what to think about any specific verdict. I'm here to ask a question that I think matters more than any one case. Whose fear gets believed? Whose stories get listened to? And how do we build a world where every person's fear is treated as human? Where the melanin that God gave us is not the thing that determines whether we're seen as people or as threats. We're all human. We all experience fear, and every one of us deserves to be seen clearly, not through the lens of someone else's conditioning, but through the lens of the dignity that God placed in us before any system had a vote. If this helped you see something more clearly, please share it with someone who needs this conversation. If you have some comments or questions, please list them below the video. And please subscribe for more. Take care of yourself, your mind, your heart, your spirit, and remember to love God, love your neighbor, and love yourself. Take care.